Hey you guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we're talking springtime spinnerbait fishing. The spinnerbait is one of those staple bass fishing techniques. Whether you've been bass fishing for 2 weeks or 40 years, a spinnerbait needs to be one of those techniques that you are at least proficient at fishing. In a lot of situations, it's a technique that you're gonna want laying on the deck of the boat or tied on your rod almost all of the time, and it is so often overlooked. The chatterbait, the bladed jig, that category has exploded so large in recent years that it has completely overshadowed the spinnerbait. But that spinnerbait bite is something special. I throw it a lot, and I throw it in a lot of different situations, especially when I see other people throwing the bladed jig. Now, you guys already know I'm fanatical about bladed jigs. I believe there's a time and a place for both, but the spinnerbait 100% should not be overlooked in your lineup. So today, we're gonna take a look at some of my personal favorite or personal confidence spinnerbaits. I'm gonna try and keep it really simple for you. I will give you some outliers, some oddballs, and in the video description, I'll organize them in a way that makes the most sense. I'll organize probably my core spinnerbaits, then some full-size spinnerbaits, and then some of those oddballs for you, so it's really easy to find those. But the spinnerbait in general is a bait that you can use to cover water. It's a bait that you can use to target cast. And what I mean by that is you can use it to pick apart pieces of cover. Also, as I'm turning around and looking this way, there is a territorial gator that keeps creeping up on this point behind me. I think I'm just in his zone. He's a little aggravated about it. If you keep an eye over my shoulder, you might see him pop up. He showed up 3 or 4 times in the last few minutes. But back to spinnerbaits. This category, again, you can do all sorts of different things with it. I love to fish them fast. When fish move up on flats, a spinnerbait is extremely weedless, especially if it doesn't have a stinger hook on it. You can throw it through almost any piece of cover and it will come right through, even though it does not have a weed guard and it's just an exposed jig hook. The actual arm of the spinnerbait going to the blades acts as a weed guard, and it's incredible how weedless these are. I mean, I can throw them way back through the junk and they will come straight out. You can also take that spinnerbait and slow roll it in deep water. I'll use them in river systems to roll down the edges of deep banks. So many things that we can do with them. Now, one thing I will say, and this will not surprise you if you've ever seen me talk about a spinnerbait before, is that 99.9% of my spinnerbait fishing is done with double willow blades. I don't care what color, we'll get to that, okay? Don't worry about that. But it's all double willows. Now, there are a lot of other great blade shapes, and a lot of people are gonna tell you that you wanna throw them, but I'm just telling you, in my own personal fishing, in a lifetime of bass fishing, I almost exclusively throw double willows. I've done a lot of research. I've listened to different blade shapes underwater, and I believe that a double willow most closely resembles the vibration of shad underwater. Now, shad aren't in every fishery in the country, but they're in most of them. And it's the primary thing that bass are eating in most fisheries. And I believe a double willow does the best job of representing that. So that's what I throw. That's where all of my confidence lies, even in muddy water, even at night. Not that there aren't other great things, and a lot of people love Colorado blades and Indiana blades. I get it. But if you're listening to me, that's where my confidence is. Now, excuse me, I've got a variety of spinnerbaits sitting here, but I'm gonna pick one. Let's do an if you could only have one, okay? And it is not easy to do because I carry a lot of spinnerbaits with me, right? I love having these things on the boat because I just don't know when I'm gonna need them. And I think you guys have seen these. Yeah, we've talked about these bags before. I used to carry cases and cases and cases of spinnerbaits. These are the Busby Fast Flats in the half large. That's the size, HL, half large. I was able to take boxes and boxes and boxes and just condense them down into these bags. Some of them are, you know, by brand. There's Megabass, there's my natural spinnerbaits, my Nichols Catalyst half ouncers. I have a lot of these bags, but this has made my spinnerbait fishing so much more organized. And I mean, I'm able to compress tons of spinnerbaits down into just a little spot and stick it in the edge of my tackle compartment. I love throwing a lot of different spinnerbaits in a lot of different situations, so it's very hard for me to neck it down. But as I think through my catches the last couple of years, there is a standout bait. If I could only have one, I would currently reach for this bait right here. This is a Megabass SV3. It's got these 4 longer strands in here, these large strands that act as a trailer, so I don't even need to put a trailer on here. It's got a good solid hook on it, but it is a small hook. And then it's got very downsized blades. It's a very subtle spinnerbait, and we'll get back to that. But if I could only have one, the first thing in the video description I'll link is this guy right here. I fish it with and without a trailer hook, depending on situation. But when I do throw a trailer hook on it, I throw this guy right here in the 1/0. That's why I have these with me. It's a very small hook for that very small spinnerbait. Again, my confidence is just through the roof on that setup. Now, with that said, I have 3 categories of spinnerbaits here. We've got finesse spinnerbaits, full size, and then sort of the specific, you know, sort of the oddballs that I use for different things. Let's start with finesse, because this is where I do the bulk of my spinnerbait fishing anymore. I mean, we just picked one, right? But if I go any broader than that, I can't go to 2 or 3. I went to 4. I couldn't narrow it down. And they're a little bit situational. So the SV3 is number 1. We just talked about that. These others, they're in no particular order, okay? But I'll show you sort of what they're for. Number 2 is going to be this guy right here from Shimano. This is the Swagey. Now, we have talked a lot about the Swagey. I might even have one down here. Yeah, I do. We've talked a lot about the Swagey Strong the last year or two. It's a great spinnerbait. I really enjoy fishing it. But then they came out with the Swagey. The Swagey, not strong, i.e. it's a little bit weaker, is actually, I like that one even more. So one thing to understand about spinnerbaits is it's all about vibration. The thicker the wire, or overall, the bigger the profile, you know, the thicker the skirt, the heavier the hook, all those things reduce vibration. The thinner that arm go into those blades, the more vibration you will get out of that spinnerbait. So you end up with a larger presence from a smaller package. So visually, it's smaller, it's finessey, but presence in the water, drawing power, pulling fish, especially if the water's murky, you get that from vibration. So the Swagey has really begun to stand out for me because it's a very light wire spinnerbait, but it changes right here. This is a heavy wire, and then right inside there is a swage where it necks down from one wire size to another. This wire from here is much smaller than this wire here. So you've got the strength of a standard spinnerbait from the line tie down to your hook, but then you've got lighter wire out to your blades. Very, very interesting. The next one. This is a War Eagle Screamin' Eagle. The Screamin' Eagle, I have a long history with this bait. I have thrown it on and off for decades. The Screamin' Eagle for me truly shines when I need to go faster in deeper water. So if the fish are up in, you know, a 1 to 3 foot flat, that's not my bait. But if the fish are staging moving up, but they're not all the way up shallow yet. So sometimes you'll have the buck males push up shallow, but the females will be sitting farther out. In that situation, I want to be rolling out deeper, but sometimes I want to go fast in that deeper stuff, because you can do it, you can go deep with any spinnerbait, but you'll have to really slow it down. That War Eagle Screaming Eagle comes in heavier weights, and they're hidden weights, right? You don't see it on the front. It's inside the skirt. But heavier weights with smaller blades, again, that smaller compact profile is key to me. And then it's got an awesome O'Shaughnessy style hook that's crazy strong. That is a bait if I want to fish outside edges, either on a slow roll super deep or pretty quick in that shallower transition. I'm able to do it with that one right there. And then this is a brand new one. Now, we got to play with this one ahead of time, but this compact spinnerbait from Dirty Jigs is awesome. It is a combination, so it's a light wire spinnerbait, fairly small hook, but still heavy wire, but then full-size blades. So I'm getting full-size vibration from an overall compact spinnerbait. It's like a crossover between a full-size and a little compact spinnerbait. Very, very interesting. Because of that length, see how far this blade sticks out behind my hook point? You can get short strikes with that. So either you want to run a stinger hook on this one to stick out, or you want to run a swim bait trailer, and we'll get to that. Adding a swim bait to any spinnerbait helps the fish hone in. Oh, we've got an airboat coming by. It might get a little loud for a minute here. Hopefully it's not too bad. But this is very interesting because some of my favorite swim jig colors, you know, Alabama brim, tactical shad, now they're offered in that spinnerbait, and that is just, I really like it. So that sort of wraps up those compact profiles. And again, that's where I live the majority of the time. So if you really want to narrow it down, if you want to fish with confidence this spring, because again, you just want to add the spinnerbait to your mix. Don't worry about specific situations to throw it. Just tie a spinnerbait on a rod and add it to the rods that you've got on your boat, or stick it in a box in your backpack if you're walking the bank so that you've got it with you, and just try it. When you start catching fish, start catching them on a lipless, bottom hopping. Maybe you're getting them on a blade bait. Maybe you're catching them on a chatterbait. If you're catching them other ways, maybe you're on some swim bait fish, stop, tie that spinnerbait on and see. I'll use it for two things. I can cover a ton of water and find fish, and then I can also use it to dial in. So like, say I'm catching them on a chatterbait, I've got a school fired up and it stops, I can boom, switch to a spinnerbait and catch a few more out of that school, like a 1-2 punch. Two very different applications for it. Now, full-size spinnerbaits. There's a time and a place for a full-size spinnerbait. If you are on a lake where they're eating more gizzard shad than threadfin shad, or you've seen a bass chase the shad and they're big, or a bass has spit up shad and they're big, or if you've got dirtier water. You know, if you're deep in the south, tannic water, I'm thinking the California Delta, Florida, southern Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, southern Texas, right? Lakes where you just know there's big ones in and around cover. Full-size spinnerbaits pull fish farther than finesse spinnerbaits. Again, it's about vibration. That's drawing power. So a full-size will pull them the farthest, but a compact will get bit in more situations. It'll get bit in crystal clear water. It'll get bit when things go calm on you. You know, you had a good breeze blowing, you're catching them on a full size, and then that breeze lays down. That compact will keep catching them. Full size spinnerbaits, I've got three here for you. The first one, and again, no particular order. First one, the Damiki. The Damiki TOT. And not a lot to say about it other than it's got a good hook in it, fairly light wire. So this is like it's also a crossover. It's a full-size frame, but fairly finessey. Smaller blades than some of the other full-size spinnerbaits, and some really, really good colors. I have just done dynamite with this spinnerbait. It's here not because there's like some key feature that blows my mind, but because of the sheer number of fish I've caught on it the last few years. It just gets them. Next one, the Nichols Catalyst is a killer. A couple things that I really like about this. Very simple profile. So they do plated heads. So you're either going chrome or gold plated, so super reflective. And then the skirts, they're made of a little bit different material, and I just like the way they flow. Notice how the outer is fairly small, the inner is long. So you get sort of this flow on the outside and then that body on the inside. This pairs up extremely well to swim bait trailers. I've just done really well with it. And then the last one is the River to Sea Bling. Thought I heard something. I'm just making sure that that guy's not creeping on me. There's another one back there in the corner. I don't know if you guys can see it, but that's not the one I'm talking about. He's up in here somewhere. The last one is the River to Sea Bling. This guy, again, full-size profile, but it's a very light wire spinnerbait. I'm able to fish it on lighter line, fish it in different situations, but if you've seen me talk spinnerbaits before, you've probably seen me talk about this. If not, this is huge. The Bling has the thinnest blades of any spinnerbait that I fish. Do you see that? I'm flexing that blade and it's coming back. These blades are so thin that that allows me to flutter this thing at insanely slow speeds. With any spinnerbait, any of them, 1/2 ounce is my main size, just across the board. If you have to gamble, 1/2 ounce. There's times when I throw 3/4, there's times that I throw 3/8, but this one in particular, the Bling, if you go down to a 3/8 with those super light blades, you can roll this thing so slow, or it's just bulging the surface, and you can kind of pop it and work it. With a swim bait trailer on there, that's pulling back. The swim bait trailer itself pulls back, it adds pressure. That lets you go even slower, and I can pump that rod and just flutter those blades. I love doing that around visible, shallow cover. Throw it up here, roll it right down the edge of the cypress tree, and right as I get to the tree, I pump that thing a couple of times. Those fish will just unload on it. That change in cadence can be amazing. And then last but not least is those situational spinnerbaits. Spinnerbaits that just work above and beyond in different environments. So like your bright chartreuses, right? This is one, usually when I go to a bright, bold spinnerbait, we're talking muddy water situations. And a lot of times that's a full-size profile, like a Nichols Pulsator. But when I'm talking smallies, like we fish the Tennessee River, I love to fish for smallmouth. A lot of times those fish are really aggressive when that water's flowing fast and it's muddy. Again, that Megabass SV3 in a bright, bold color will just get those fish. Now those pulsators that I keep talking about, there's some different, oh my goodness, there's 4 of them laying here. I've only got 6 situational spinnerbaits. Let's do this one too. This is another SV3. This is more of a gill type. I think it's called IU, I think. I'll link the right one in the video description for you. But notice the black blades rather than chrome or gold blades. When I get tannic water, so that tea-colored water, I love rolling a spinnerbait with black blades. And in fact, there's that trailer that I was talking about. Oh, that's the Gamakatsu. The other one, I use both. But see how small that trailer hook is there on the back of that spinnerbait? It's out there in those little long tails, and it helps hook those fish. The other one is gonna be these pulsators, okay? Again, there's 4 of them. Same deal as that last one, tannic type water. Look at that color there. Those blades are like a dull tea color themselves with some different glitter colors on them. That is such a killer. And then in the spring, you get that murky water early season. Sometimes the red and the day glow orange just crush. We know that in the chatterbait, throwing fire craw, right? We know that in square bills. We know that in lipless. We spend so much time throwing those reds and those oranges in the spring. Same deal with the spinnerbait. Nickels, of everybody in the industry, Nickels is where I have the most confidence in their painted blades. They're super durable, they hold up, and again, that's that pulsator, which is just proven over time. I love that profile. And then here's two more. This is the glitter blades. When you get this, slicked off conditions, spinnerbait's just not happening, fish are shut down, but you want it to happen, glitter blades is one of the things that I'll do to try. Can you see it? It's like that electric shad purple blue shining on that blade. There's something about that. It just softens the whole profile. It reduces the flash. It's more color than flash, and I can catch them. I can extend my bite window with that. And then at the complete other end of the spectrum, we've got these shattered glass blades, also on a pulsator. But these blades are all about reflecting light. I've talked about this before. In underwater footage, we've got footage of this spinnerbait shining so bright that it's shining up to the surface of the water and reflecting back down to the camera. It's that bright, it's that flashy. This is the spinnerbait I turn to when those waves are just crashing, right? You've got waves churning, that water's mixed up. It's the complete opposite of the glitter blades. It's all about drawing power. We've got the profile, we've got a large spinnerbait, we've got the vibration working for us. You add that insane blade flash, and that drawing power is just as big as it gets. When those waves are crashing and you need fish to know you're there, that is the best blade I've ever found for pulling those fish. Again, unique situations, I don't throw those every day. If we're talking about the ones I throw every day, it's these little compact guys. This is where my personal confidence lies, right? Those little compact frames as opposed to those big full-size spinnerbaits. And then the trailer hooks. I just talked about this guy. I've thrown trailer hooks, various trailer hooks for years, but more and more and more I'm going to these two. This is that little Hayabusa. I throw that little 1/0 on my little compact spinnerbaits. And then this Gamakatsu, that G-Power Stinger, you'll notice it's got this weird little shape. It was designed by Aaron Martins when he was still here with us. And what it does, when the spinnerbait has drag in the water, because it looks a little funny with that kink in it, right? But when it's actually running in the water, it changes the way that it's hanging, and it keeps that point right up where you want it. And it really works well. The fish that I hook on it do not come off. So I've usually, in the past, I've used traditional stinger hooks, but more and more, it's one of those two for me. And then the last thing is trailers. I've got a couple of very specific trailers for you. On the little guys, if you need a trailer, I'll usually use the little 3-inch Largo shad, but I rip the little tail section. I've got a 3.5 here. I don't have the 3-inch with me, but this is a 3.5. But see this little tail section in here? I rip that out, pull that off, and it makes it a little bit more subtle, that tail. It'll roll a little bit more. I really like that trailer on those little guys. But for more of my full-size spinnerbaits, it's going to be one of these two. The Demiki 4-inch Armor Shad or the 4.3 Kitech. You wouldn't think that the specific swim bait would matter that much, but it totally does. Some trailers pull back too hard on the bait, so when you go to pop them and work them, they just start and stop. That's all they do. And adding to that, not all spinnerbaits are created equal. All of these baits I've chosen for very specific reasons. Because a lot of people will look at these and they're like, man, some of those are too much money. I get it. But in spinnerbaits specifically, you get what you pay for. A lot of spinnerbaits, if they're not made well, you can't see it on a store shelf. But you throw a spinnerbait in the water, and it'll be coming through the water like this, at an angle. Hook point down. They're garbage. All the spinnerbaits that I have confidence in, when you put them in the water and pull them, they are running perfectly level, like they're supposed to. That is where my confidence lies. These are very specific choices. And then again, adding a swim bait tail to them will help level them off also, because now you have that trailer pulling back. The tail catching water is pulling, and it's rotating that and helping it be flatter. But again, if that's too much pressure in that swim bait tail, when you go to work it or pop, so like snap your rod tip or pop your reel handle just to get it to flutter around cover, they won't do it. They just start and stop. They don't actually flutter and move. So these are very specific. And then the other thing, the length is very specific. Like, I will not throw a 4.8 Kitech on a spinnerbait. I throw a 4.3. That seems like a nothing thing. Here's the deal. If you throw a 4.8, throughout a full day of spinnerbait fishing, you will lose track of the amount of times that your tail comes around and hooks the point on a cast. But if you drop down to a 4.3, 80 or 90% of that is reduced. And the vast majority of your casts are perfect. It's those little subtle details. And then that Damiki is just, it's got the right thing going for it. Great profile, it's compact, it's a fairly durable plastic, it holds up to a lot of bites, and it's the right amount of back pressure to help level your baits out, but also to allow them to really flow and move and pop. Great options. As far as spinnerbait rods, you own a rod that can do this. Anything like the little compact guys, anything from like a 610 medium, 610 medium heavy, all the way up to like a 7.3 medium or medium heavy. Full size, 7 foot to 7.3 medium heavy. The only time I'm going heavier than that is if I know I'm around giants in cover, then I'll go to a heavy rod. But if you own a 610 to a 7.3 medium to medium heavy rod, you're set. I like to fish them on braid to leader. Typically like 40-pound braid to a 15. Well, the little guys, you could throw those down on like 10 and 12, but 12, 15, up to like 18, maxing out at 20, even around heavy cover. But the reason I go braid to leader is that there's less stretch and it's very responsive. So if I'm trying to work it, pop it, get action out of that bait, there's small movements. If I'm fluoro or mono, I've really got to work them hard. And over the course of a day, huge difference in how hard you're working between the lines. In the video description, I will link my specific favorite rods. Like, I'll give you my favorite rod that I throw, those little compact guys, and a favorite rod for full size, and then maybe a great budget rod as well for the guy that wants to save a little bit of money but still wants the right action out of the bait. Guys, I hope this helps you. You can throw that spinnerbait in the same places you're throwing a lot of other baits, but it's a different look, different profile, and it does catch them. Give it a try this spring. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.